those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, "You fool," will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. And you have heard it said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his own heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away, for it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. It's also said, "Whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce." But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife except on the grounds of sexual immorality makes her commit adultery. Whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you've heard it said to those of old, "You shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn." I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is the footstool, by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more comes from evil. The word of the Lord. You may be seated. You know, as we were going through the Old Testament passages here, I was recalling something very interesting, but this very different understanding that comes through this. You see, in the Old Testament, notice what it says: if you follow the commandments, then these things will happen. And it's important for us to kind of keep that in the back of our mind. The Old Testament talks about this, but here, remember what we talked about a week or two ago, where Christ says, "I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it." I've come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. Now no longer are we following the commandments. We're following Christ. Keep that in your mind as we go over this rather difficult and troubling text to people whose heart still clings to the world. And listen to Christ's answer and promise as he takes us on the journey through the waters of sin and death and into his resurrected glory. You know, I find one of the biggest differences between a mature person and an immature person is the ability to admit when they are wrong. Many of us have friends who come to us and say, "You know what, I've wronged you, I've done this wrong," or there was some problem we have and it's better if we just clear the air. You know, what the funniest thing is that the people are usually under the delusion that admitting that you're wrong makes you weak. I find that admitting you're wrong makes you appear strong to people who are mature as well. In my own life, perhaps the most chilling and nerve-wracking experiences that I've had is when I have to lay my sins bare before someone else. Not just to admit that I was wrong, but to literally say, I have no excuse. Anyone who's confessed to a friend, anyone who's confessed to a family member knows just how hard it is, because you're constantly subconsciously looking for an out. You feel like a cornered animal, and you're constantly looking for some sort of excuse to justify your behavior. And in those moments, it takes every ounce of strength to say, no, I was wrong. There was no excuse. My excuses are just lies. We all think confession is good for somebody else. But if we are really honest, when we perform it, it feels an awful lot like dying. I don't want you to think about someone else that you know right now who owes you an apology, but think to yourself and think of the people in your own life that maybe you do owe an apology to. Or think in the past, maybe this past week even, where you've given an apology, made an apology, confessed something to someone. Think for yourself. Don't think about others, because this is a very tempting part. You know, it's pretty easy to think about yourself when you want to imagine the good things happening. When you're thinking about the promises that God has for you. But boy, we are front and center stage there. When we have to talk about our demonstrable righteousness in front of the world, man, we want that spotlight fixed on us. We want someone accidentally walking in on us when we're doing a good job. I heard a preacher say, he had just had this huge conference at his church, and he says, I'm ashamed to admit it, I'm going through and I'm picking up all the debris after the conference, all the bulletins left and all those sorts of things. And he says, it'd be really nice if one of the church council members walked in right now and saw me doing this. We all want to have center stage when we are demonstrating our righteousness. But, and you knew there was a but coming, but it is hard to think of yourself when it is the price you have paid for the times you haven't measured up. When we've fallen short of righteousness, boy, our minds, we jet to someone else. We run to thinking about someone else, don't we? That's not what Jesus is talking about. And you're going to have to bear with me, because you're going to have to go through the cross in order to get to Easter here. This is what Christ is laying out here. He is speaking of 3 specific areas where people break the law. But then he offers them a cure, provided they will take hold of this cure. He tells the people bluntly, don't hate, don't lust, and don't make promises you can't keep. Don't hate, don't lust, don't make promises you can't keep. In each section, it's interesting, there's a unifying theme. And this unifying theme isn't apparent to us when we try and define righteousness on our own steam. In each section, Christ compares, you have heard it said, with his statement, but I tell you. You have heard it said, but I tell you. What is he saying here? What does he mean by this? Sadly, many ministers will quote Jesus. Many ministers today will quote him. But then they'll go and do the exact thing he is warning the people against. Christ is warning people that we have already gone over to the enemy for even indulging the devil's opinion. You may think, as long as I don't show the symptoms of my sin, then I haven't really sinned. As long as I don't have any, I have a friend of mine who has a disease, and it struck me as funny. The disease is called asymptomatic. Asymptomatic, what does that mean? It means he's got the disease, but he doesn't have the symptoms for it. And you may think, well, then he doesn't have the disease. Well, he's got the disease. He still has to live his life because it will hurt him if he doesn't take care of it. But he's not showing any of the symptoms. You know, many of us in here, and I know because I'm one of you too, have an asymptomatic sinful nature. We go out and we say, as long as I control my symptoms, then I'm not a sinner. And you see what Christ is saying here. He is the great physician, and he is prescribing a cure. We're going to have to wait till the end to hear what that cure is. But many of you who have been here for long enough probably know what it is. One can't help but think, when one thinks about this asymptomatic thing, this fact that as long as we don't manifest sin, we're not really sinners, we can't help but think of Mark Twain's quip. I didn't attend the funeral, but I sent a nice letter saying I approved of it. I didn't really kill the guy, but things happen. So what happens if we are on the receiving end? We don't often think about that, do we? We don't often think that the person that is on the other end may be a human being like us. One bad day and we are the butt of someone else's joke. We are their dehumanized prop. We are the one left holding the bag for someone else's scheme. Slowly we stop to think of other people as people made in the image of God, and we start to think of them as means to end. For Christ, the intent matters because God matters. And we matter because we matter to God. The harmless joke, the second glance, the poor sucker are important because we have turned people in means to our selfish ends, instead of looking to our neighbor's needs to promote God's planned redemption for the entire cosmos. Humans are more than mere ends to the means for God, but rather the means that brought Christ to his end, the end of his life, but also for us, the end of our fear of death and of sin. Christ has completed those two in his end. For what we find on the other side of confession is absolution, and it is grace. This is why Christ tells us not to try and excuse away our sins, our failures. It is because his grace is big enough that it can cover anything we could possibly lay in front of them. And his question is obvious. Then why? If this is the case, why are you holding anything back from me? It's as if we have the cure within reach and we just want to cure the manifesting symptoms, instead of letting the cure cure all of us. The reason why God is telling us to accept the full repercussions of the law is because he wants us to lay hold of the full promises of Christ's grace. I can't help but think of a silly meme that I once saw that starts off with the proposition, when your toddler won't let you help them open their favorite snack. And then it incorporates the scene from The Lord of the Rings where Gandalf, the wizard, is intervening with a friend caught in dark magic and says, I'm not trying to rob you. I'm trying to help you. This is what this passage is talking about here. I'm not trying to rob you. I'm not trying to steal your joy. I'm not trying to make you feel like it's all over. I'm not trying to put an unnecessary burden upon you. I'm telling you what the law says and how you must keep the commandments perfectly. And you can't. But if you follow me, if you come after me, if you go and follow me to the death at the cross and the resurrection and Easter, then you will achieve perfect righteousness because I have achieved perfect righteousness. Christ is not trying to rob us of our righteousness, imperfect as it is. Christ is trying to give us a new righteousness because He is perfect and has perfected it by living a sinless life and dying the death that we all deserve. Many of us believe this is God attempting to rob us of our fun, our free will, our prideful sense that we could just be good if the law were relaxed just a little bit. But rather what Christ is doing is He is making an inroad to your heart. He is saying this cure goes deeper than you think it does. You may think, I'm just going to cover up all the manifesting symptoms. I'm going to make your life better. I'm going to make it so people think you're a pretty good person. No, what He is saying is, I want you. I want to change your heart. I want to dwell in you so that you can bear fruit and so that you can reproduce this cure for everyone. Just like someone who's been inoculated, now they can share that cure with others. What Christ is really saying, though, is what we have been talking about these past few weeks. He promises to take on anything and everything we could possibly throw at Him. My father tells me this story. He says he would go and visit this one woman, and this woman would put on her Sunday best, and she would deliver food to him when he would come to visit her. And then he said, okay, do you want to take communion? She says, oh no, I'm not worthy. How proud do you have to be to reject that free gift? What makes you think you have anything at all that God cannot forgive? What makes you think that the one who died for you does not want to forgive any sin you can throw at Him? People, worldly, worse than you, have accepted the free gift of Christ's grace. It is pride that keeps His righteousness at arm's length. It is pride that keeps the cure from coming deep into our soul and Christ living there. You see what it says, He is our righteousness, not our works. And so when you fail, and you will, because we all do, even I do. Okay, I thought there was going to be more laughter. There we go. When we fail, and we all will, come to Christ. He wants to heal you. And it will feel like death, that confession. It will feel like brokenness, that confession. But afterwards, that empty spot that was filled with the hidden sin in your heart will be filled with the forgiving, righteous love of God. How remarkable is that? How wonderful a news is that? For He is our righteousness. But it doesn't stop there. If the righteousness of God, which fills up our heart when we admit that we're wrong, can make you feel good, can make you feel revived, restored, alive again, think what that will do to your neighbor. Even your immature neighbors need to know the love of Christ. Everyone does. Go, share what Christ has done for you, and then Christ can do it for others as well. Amen.